It's time. Welcome to this talk, artist talk, lecture, interview, what we call it. Is it okay? I'm walking a bit to and through, Mr. Cameraman. Yes, you know who I am, but I don't know for the benefit of the streaming that I should say that I'm Hanne Tofte Jespersen, composer invited as composer in residence. I think it is in residency. You English speaking residency residence for this year's Nordic Song Festival, and there's a bit of I think we'll find out. And I will do it in English, so that and then we can switch into, if there's things that are somehow incomprehensible in English, we can switch to Scandinavian and vice versa and help each other. I hope it's okay. So, I have been asked to talk about myself. That's a very big topic, isn't it? No, it's a challenge somehow, but as a composer. And since we have limited time, and this lecture should also hold a kind of conversation, discussion, interview, where Inger Dam Jensen and I will talk, and where we also invite you to participate. So I've had to choose some topics from work as a composer. And though I would start maybe saying that I'm a composer who started relatively late with really composing. I have a music background. I've worked with music all my life, and I was that kind of child who were like 2 years old, always singing new songs, but I'm not out of a family of artists at all. I don't think any in my family had imagined that you can make a living, or that you can live and as artist. And sometimes you make a living from it also. But it was not. There were no such role models around me that showed me that way. But I was very fond of singing, and me and my sister, when we were 6, 7 years old, we went very often to the neighbor's house where we played with the daughters, but we were also very fond of their piano. And so my parents noticed that, and they decided to buy an upright piano and found a teacher for us. And though they did not play themselves, I'm very grateful that they did so. And then when I was 13, I changed school to what was also a gymnasium, a high school, where there were some very good teachers, and there were good choirs, and I, for the first time, entered a good choir. And so that was like, one of those moments in life where you really find out, wow, this is part of my way, my pathway in life. And I'm university educated from university in Copenhagen with musicology. And in my time, at least, we had a lot of time. So we had both solo lessons in singing and piano playing, and we learned conducting choirs and ensembles, and we had a lot of music history, and we had a lot of theory. And at that time, there was not that pressure on you finishing and being a candidate as soon as possible so you can come out in society. Actually, I went out and taught music when I was very young, because there was a lack of teachers in gymnasium. So I also started teaching when I was only 22 years old. And I was very preoccupied by music, teaching music, what is it does to us. And that was, for everyone, that was gymnasium. And I also entered some research where we were a group of people. I was employed by the University Institute of Musicology in Copenhagen. We made a project, empiric project, where we were sitting as observers in music lessons, and we also interviewed students and the teachers about how they experienced, what they experienced. The interesting thing about that was that students they know a lot about the teacher. The teacher is very engaged in what she is teaching. So if you ask a teacher, what have you been doing for the time being, or what do you think, you get a lot of actual facts. And if you ask the students, they would say, "Oh, we're doing more or less the same." The two, because but they were very observant to the teacher, and we were very interested in the role of the person, the personality aspect of teaching music. But I was also someone who, in my study years, were very interested in psychology and in the what is music as a language, what is it as an expression, and came up very early across depth psychology, first Freud, but later much Jungian. You made a mention these things yesterday, and in a way what I'm going to talk about is also treading the same line but from another angle. And I'm saying this because I think in my life I have spent almost as much time on studying symbolic languages, mythology, mystery traditions, and at a point, if you're interested in such matters, what is there between earth and heaven, or heaven and earth, and what is it about? What are all these legends about? At a point, some of us makes a choice where we don't only read about it, but we also start doing the things. Because if you want to understand symbols, myths, symbols, you have to work on them, get them into yourself, and the method is meditation, visualization of them. And that's what it really is, all these handed down teachings from inner world. They are methods to work with. If it's only intellectual, you will be very fed up very soon. But because it takes time. And I'm saying this because I have been working a lot with music as a singer, pianist, and I later took an education as organist. And I have arranged a lot of music when I was in my youth, a lot of choir things and things for orchestra groups and so. But I didn't really think of myself as a composer. I had also another thing in my life that took me to West Africa in the 1990s. I have a classical background from a child and youth. When I started teaching in gymnasium, I really found out I had to do rhythmic music also. I needed to be able to accompany things. I needed to be able to instruct bands and so I had to learn that. And then I missed something, and I got very interested in world music. And by coincidence, I had formed a student group doing contemporary world music, and one of the students had his family, he was a trumpeter, and they were 24 students from the whole school. And the trumpeter, his family was hosting guest teachers from Ghana. And he came to our rehearsals, and he was so thrilled that there were Danes and a Danish teacher who were working seriously hard with learning music from the African continent. So in my Christmas holiday, he threw in a letter where he suggested that we should build up a cultural center in his hometown, where he was having his family and his work in a provincial town in Ghana. And it was handwritten, but there were several pages, and my name was there. And I just, I have to look into this. And actually, to make a very long story short, it became 7 years of my life being a co-leader of a Danish-supported cultural center in West Africa, in an area where drum language and dance is the tradition. And so I was also very influenced by a culture where they, in their own languages, have no word for music, because there's one word that means the same as play, that you can, playing is both something for you play together, but it's also that you play music. Agro was the name of this center, and it covered both music and drama and dance and storytelling. And these things were all integrated in the tradition, and the artists who were affiliated with that center were what we would say multi-artists. They didn't use that word, they were just artists, and they expected that a musician and singer could dance and vice versa, and that she would also have like a talent for, many of them were very good comedians. And I would say, with my knowledge from university background, it's commedia dell'arte they are doing there in their way. They could mime and make a parody of all of us when there were Danish visitors, they just noted our way of walking, and they could walk like it, and you could recognize, oh, that's him. They could also dance off. They could show how Europeans dance offbeat when we tried to follow their very complicated rhythms. It was very fascinating because their roots music is built up around drum language, which is actually a language you can talk on drums. And it was not, it was in their region, it was not one of those small drums, it was big drums. And they used to say that all drums speak, but some of them say only one word. So if you have did-up, 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 and I was in such a drum group, and you sit for an hour and try to keep just the same. And as a European, you think, oh, is there something else? No, you have to become very good in that. And then they had some soloist drums, and they were talking a deep language, where it was like proverbs, ordsprog, where you talk in poetic language. And it's possible because their language is tonal. The language it means, I talked with one of you, where are you, Claire? Maybe she's here. This about the tonal languages that the intonation makes meaning. So if you say minim, it means I don't know. And if you say minim, it means I do know. So as a poor foreigner, you really are on a hard task to, and this influenced me. So when this project ended, and I was again working in Denmark, I was somehow interested in trying to transfer some of this integration of music, dance, storytelling, some dramatic things into I'm doing it in Denmark. And so I started actually from the storytelling or making some concerts together with some colleagues where there was integrated narration in it. And at the same time, I educated as an organist. And now we are soon coming to the point of being a composer. Because I was still doing somebody else's music or learning the tradition. I wrote now and then a little song, but I certainly didn't consider myself as a composer. But I educated as an organist, and I got a job. And I was to have children's choir. And I honestly thought that the repertoire was not good. So I thought, this I can do better. So I started composing some things for children's choir. And then I was invited by somebody else to say, I think you can write also something else. Will you write a piece for our concert? And I said, a piece for you? I'm not sure. But I did, and it was working, it functioned, it was a good choir, there were violin, organ, and double bass, and okay, I said, I think I can compose. And so I was asked about more. And so at a time where I was almost 50 years, I was at the latter part of 40s, I really started to being a composer. So I've been like professionally composing for 20 years now. I started out with this about the symbols and the psychology and the myths, because where I really found my voice as a composer, that was when I started, I had the interest in setting some handed-down scripts from mystery traditions to music. And I'll show you such an example of what that can be. Because, I formed a group of singers and musicians. And because I found out that when I contemplated these texts, I started to hear music in them. And that music was not like something I had sort of invented myself. It was a different music. And I found a method where, there are thousands of ways to be a composer. Some do systems, and I could never do any music out of a system. I don't think I can. That was why Inger Christensen was a challenge, but that's another story. We'll come to that. But I found out that in my case, little motifs, like something like this, could be the beginning of a whole piece. And I was always singing them first. I just sang intuitively, without thinking. And so I found out that these small motifs, if I hurry on to write them down in music, they won't vanish, they won't disappear. And so that would be material for maybe a whole composition. And that is that has been my sort of one of my methods to be very what do you call it, to be true to. I mean, not follow that where you say, oh, this is nothing. It is something. The small things are something. So some of the first things I said to music were some texts from, you can say, Western mystery tradition from the Middle East area. Some of the inner Jewish Christian teachings. Some of that, you don't find it in the official church, in that which is not the official. There's actually both a Godfather in the heaven and a Godmother in the earth. And since I've been looking as a woman for that female, where is she? Where is the woman? Where's the goddess? Where is that? It cannot be so that there's only a Godfather and a son. I hope I don't offend. I'm not here to preach at all. But to me it was kind of a relief to find out that, there's something that has been left out for a very long time, 2,000 years or more. But some of the scripts that were hidden in the desert at that time, these ørkenfædre, the old who hid away their scrolls, their skriftruller, and they were only found in the 1940s, are full of these old forgotten teachings. And that's very interesting. And I tried, that was one of the first things I said to music, was such a script that had been translated to English. It had a line going, "Be still, know I am God." And at that time, in our bathroom, we had a very noisy ventilator, having like a drone tone. And that was an E flat. And I just, when I took my shower, I was just singing with this humming. And that was actually what made this line for this music. And I mean, you can actually use anything around in your surrounding. It doesn't have to be anything sacred, because you can make sacred things out of anything. Because this is not, it's not mystical, but in that way. It's just being creative to your surroundings. I formed a group in 2007 called Music for the Mysteries, because I found out that this is something I can write for. And I wish to play back a thing for you stemming from a performance at that time, which it's from 2011, and it's made on, it's a wonderful text, which is it's a Welsh author who has worked on these traditions, the connection between Celtic, Nordic mysteries and the Jewish Christian ones. So this link between Middle East and our northern regions. That's what he's an expert in, and has been teaching that. And he gave me a script. I had done a little thing for one of his other texts, and he said, okay, if she can do something, I will. And he showed me a wonderful text. He had made an adaptation of a legend of a female, hermit, eremit, who were also made a local saint in northern Wales. She was like a Hildegard von Bingen, but in faraway mountain areas in Wales. Her name was Melangech, meaning honey angel, miel, angel, uncle, Melangech in Welsh. And there was this tale about her, which he had made an adaptation of. He had been sitting in a small outside a small church where it was almost a ruin in a closed valley, which according to legend and historical facts were a valley in around 580, 500, where this woman had settled down as a hermit, as a female. She had fled sort of an arranged marriage. She was really an Irish princess. She was going to marry somebody. She didn't want to marry that one. So she had crossed this narrow sea between Ireland and Wales and settled down there. And she was when it was in 1989, he was sitting, the valley was full of hares, rabbit hares, you know, and the legend says that her totem animal, her sacred animal, was the hare. And it was 1,500 years ago, but that valley was still full of hares. And the legend about her tells that at a point, the local Prince of Brochweg, a historical person, had disturbed her prayers in that sacred valley, and he had seen her, and he had the hounds, the dogs, the hounds, they had stopped. She somehow radiated sacredness, so they dug down in their hind legs, and he said, "This valley is now conserved. Never ever hunting here again." And so it has been for 1,500 years. That valley has been there, and in '89 it was still that kind of valley. And so he sat down outside this little ruin of a church, and he wrote down this story. And he gave it to me, and it's a wonderful story. And I will simply play back a little movement for you, where you can follow it. It's about the ancient man. It's about what happened when this woman actually got her name, because it was like one of those figures of myths. One of the myths are full of ancient men, the wandering Jew, such ones who do not have a name, but who appears on the stage when it's necessary. And he appears, and he takes honey, and he kind of baptizes her in honey, and says her name Melange. And so it has been. People in that area know this woman's history. And I shall just find the little audio file here, and hopefully it will play. Vi skal lige have den tilbage til start. Sådan. Should it be a bit louder? Can you follow it? The baritone and the double bass, they work unison. It's Danish baritone Teit Katstrup. I'm trying to establish this sacred valley atmosphere. I'll just find the text for you. And then we will leave these people. If you are interested in hearing the whole thing, it's recorded. You can find it on Spotify. And I also brought some CDs with it if you are still belonging to the generation that has a CD player. Because nowadays you're almost a bit, oh, do you have a CD player? Would you? Well, but this work was somehow important for me to find out what kind of music is it that I can write. I will say one thing, which is in a way personal, but it's also in public, because the contralto, whom you heard sing here, is Agnete Christensen, Swedish wonderful singer who died 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So, and it's so sad. She's no more. She had been, you who knows her, she had been, she got cancer some years back. She has been through many operations. She was still singing until a few months ago. But she was really, she had one of those aggressive types of cancer where you know you don't recover. And after being really seriously ill for some months now, she passed away Wednesday 2 weeks ago. Very, very sad. Agnete was a wonderful singer. You know, this deep contralto for a woman is it's so rare. And she worked with early music and modern music, medieval ballads, and many different types of music. And it's very moving for me to hear her voice, but her music is still there. I mean, she was a fantastic singer, which is one of the really moving things about voice. I mean, this is so personal. At the same time, it's like healing for all of us with these wonderful voices. And nowadays, we can still hear them because of the recordings. Of course, it's not like a performance, but it's there. Yeah, that's a sad truth, and bless her. Yeah, but I'll take a jump, because I'll jump a bit to another thing, because later on, I mean, this group, Music for the Mysteries, it existed for 7 years and traveled around with. In the last 4 years, it was this work, the testimony of Melange. But I'll just mention a few things about some other types of music, which is part of my work. Because another thing is that I've been commissioned in the later years to write music in a context. And that, in a way, doesn't have anything with mystery traditions to do. But since I still work that way with listening to the. I mean, if it's an instrumental piece, I mean, there's no text, so I just try to focus on the job. I mean, I'm going to write a solo piece for violin. What am I going to write? I mean, and instead of thinking about it, I try to just go deeper into it, so that I think at a point some music will start. coming up to the surface to work with. A little. It's like having, if you're knitting, what is this? The thread you have? Yeah, you know these motifs. It's like the end of such. What is that in English? Garnnøgle. Yarn. Yeah, yarn. Yeah, it's like the one end of a yarn, and so you stick to that end. And then it starts coming out as a longer thread, and at a point more threads. And so, in a way, it's a weaving to create music, for me at least. My husband, who were here for the concert yesterday, he's a violinist, and he got this idea of performing all Bach's 6 violin sonatas for solo violin and sonatas and partitas, but he's also a composer, and he wanted to invite contemporary composers into his project. So he asked some of us to compose a piece that would go together with 2 of Bach's works, because they are in pairs. There's a sonata and there's a partita. And I got one of them. And I mean, to compose in the context of Bach, I mean, who are you? It's somehow, yeah, you think I can do that? So I had really no idea. Actually, I just listened to the 2 pieces of Bach that I was going to fit into many times. And I'm an organist. I loved playing Bach when I was working as an organist. So it's the music is very deep to me, but. And so this little piece came, so this was the end of the yarn. And I've worked on it as a kind of a variation form. But there was also something else, because I had these, the partitas of Bach. They are dance, they're suite. They are his heritage from Renaissance and from the dancing things. And they are much more like folk music. And I had at that time some tune going in my mind, like something like this. So I started fitting that into the piece, and it became a dialogue between the sort of old tradition way of Baroque composers and then this folk music. And then came the always for the composer how to end your piece. Isn't it true, Matti? I mean, sometimes the ending is there, but sometimes it's really the worst. How can you come out of this? It shouldn't be too long, and somehow it should be good. So how do you do that? And at that point, I think I will just let it play back for you while I'm talking. Sorry, this is not a PowerPoint show, but we have it here. Maybe we should lower the volume a bit. And luckily, Kuno is a very good violinist, so it's better than my piano. But this that I'm going to say now is also part of what I would like to share with you who are young artists on your way into all this fantastic field we are working in. Because Mette touched upon it yesterday. And this is a theme. I think it's really so important that you are doing this week where you both get food for thought and food for your instrument. I mean, this about inspiration is crucial. And I mean, artists, we have to be fed with inspiration. And in one's work with a piece, be you a performing artist or a composer, at a point you need more food. Like, for instance, if you are in a situation where you need to find your ending. Where is it? I had sent the violinist out in the galaxies with some flageolets, and Kuno is very good on flageolets, so he's been doing these very high notes, which are wonderful to stop all kinds of But the ending, when I was fighting or striving with getting to the end, I knew that there was a German violinist, Helga Tone, who had worked intensively with Bach's solo works for violin. And she was somebody in this type of analytical studies called gematria, where you work with numbers, analyzing the number, which Bach is told to be. Johann Sebastian Bach was supposed to be also a mystic in the area of numbers, figures. And this can be coming, what we would say in Danish, very long-haired. You know, your head can be so big from analysis. But she had done some work where she had actually found, like, one of the keys to Bach's solo works is that it's full of hidden the choral tunes. And that makes sense to me, because if you think that you are Johann Sebastian Bach, you've been working within this Lutheran tradition your whole life. You're playing all week round, all year round. You're playing these German hymns. Then you have a vocabulary full of them. They are singing in you all the time. So why not? And he had made these great passions of and all the cantatas. Maybe some of you have been singing them. And so it's part of his vocabulary as a composer also. And she had this study, and I thought, okay, because I had started hearing what I identified as a Bach choral when I was striving with finding the ending of my piece. And I said, but this, I know this, I've been singing this, what is it, which one is it? There are so many Bach choraler, I mean, they take up volumes. But what I heard within myself was this one. Do you recognize it? You know where it comes from? Have some of you performed the Passion of John? Johannes Passion? Do you remember the final chorus? The final chorus that closes the whole story. That in German, it's Ach Herr, lass dein Lieb Engelein am letzten End die Seele mein in Abrahams Schoß tragen. Oh Lord, let your loving angel at the last ending, let it carry my soul to Abraham's womb. So it's a prayer for the angel to come and carry you on to where you are going. You can think it's where you came from, or where we're all going, or whatever you believe it. But it's that prayer. And that was what was in me. And I thought, okay, but Bach has used this, I cannot use that one. What shall I use that for? But then I read this Helga Tone, the German one, and she said she had found out by analyzing with the figures that in this C major solo sonata that I was sort of to be in context of, there are pieces from this very choral, the ending, Ich will dich preisen ewiglich, ba, bi, ba, 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 bi, ba, ba. She said that, and I said, okay, maybe I'm not all that wrong. And so I got that crazy idea that I would weave in some kind of Bach's choral in my ending of this, my folk song and my Fantasia theme. And so it came to and I shall just find the right piece for you so that you don't hear too much. It's here. Nice music. Okay. I don't know if you can hear it, but there is this. It comes in, but it's not in rhythm. It's just like bits of it. So that was my way of sort of honoring Mr. Bach and the way of ending, and also because I think actually had deep meaning to unite the two. And when you get such crazy ideas, you really get to work, because it can take weeks to make. But it was actually, I think it works. Kuno likes to play the piece, and I think it works. And you can hear it, it's on Spotify. I have an album called Works for Strings, and it's there, because I think we have to come to the point where I shall invite Inger. Yes. Because what we also should work with during this talk is what you heard yesterday in concert. The Inger Christen. Ja, skal du ikke det? Det synes jeg, du skal.
Skal vi se, om jeg kan forlyde den her?
Det synes jeg, du skal. Og så
Er der
finder
lyd
jeg
i?
lige.
Godt.
Because Inger and I didn't know each other. I knew Inger as an artist, but you didn't know me. I have heard you. Of course I have. But I was very happy when Gita asked me whether I would write for you for the opening concerts, and with the Mats, and we also didn't know each other. I had just heard and I had listened to you, how great artist you are. So I was very honored. And it was to be Danish. And so I decided to work on Inger Christensen, as we talked about a little yesterday. And I used also a little bit of this synchronicity thing about, is it right? You know, are there some things out there by coincidence telling you that you are right here? I was on a train down through Europe because I'd had a scholarship to be in San Cataldo, which is a wonderful Danish-owned refugium in the Amalfi bay, and I was to work on another project, but I had brought this collection of poems, these left behind poems, and I was reading them, and I was reading one which is, I'm still to set to music to Idil Alpsoy, and she says, she talks about a cafe table in the middle of Lana, L-A-N-A. I didn't know Lana, and I couldn't find it. And what do? You Google, and I found out that Lana was in the southern part of Tyrol, just south of the border between Austria and Italy. And so I thought, okay, I looked where's this train? And we were very close to Lana. I said, okay, it's not all that far out, this that I'm doing. And so you got the job, Inger.
Yes, thank you.
To first perform these songs and go into some very complicated text in a way.
Yeah, in a way, in a funny way.
But how has it been for you to work on this?
Great, thank you. No, it's been really great and really exciting. It's always exciting to receive this new music. You never know what's going to happen, and you never know how it fits you, and is there something you can't do? And so it's also a bit nerve-wracking, actually, because we didn't have that much time, so we had to use it really, really good, and we did. And but immediately I actually began reading the text. And it's always great when it's in your own language. It's a direct understanding. So you can easily feel the words immediately. But to be honest, I really didn't understand it. And I don't think it's necessary to understand it. But it's necessary to absorb it in a way and to feel it. To sense it, but many of the sentences doesn't make sense. But you can feel the humor. You can hear the humor. I'm always looking for the humor in the text, because it gets spicy in a way when you can use humor to communicate. And it's got humor, and it's got a sweetness. And it's also got so much spirituality, really. It's heaven and earth, and death and birth. And that's always interesting for me.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And then actually the music is quite naked. So you really have to fill it out. And Mats and I spent quite a long time to try to find the language, the music language, and it wasn't difficult to find the melody, but really to find the sense of it, and it succeeded actually, to be honest, for the first time with the audience, because then we have the third part. And we have the receiver, and you can just open up, and give it away, and you will receive it, and we get it back then, and that's how it works, and it's always a great feeling when you receive the words, and you receive it as you want. You can understand it, you cannot understand it, you can just feel it, you can just be moved. And perhaps you don't know what you're moved about and why. And that's, for me, a great space to be in. Yeah. And you made space for that with not filling it with everything. But it's also really scary. When it's naked, it's scary. It's scary. It is. But that's where the magic happens, I think.
For a very long time, I had only this idea with you can sing it, this jeg tydelig vinter, the first. That was there in Italy. I heard that. Jeg tydelig vinter. San Cataldo Refugium had her collected works, so I was like, okay, there's another synchronicity, it's okay. And so I was sometimes reading them. And I heard this one, but I thought, okay, Jeg tydelig vinter. But I did not know much about Inger Christensen, I must say. She's new to me, which is in a way, it's fine. But if you look at a poem like Frostkrystal, you soon notice there's a system. She was what you call system poet. She really, I mean, she has this Jeg tydelig vinter. Vinteren tyder sit hjerte, hjertet tyder sin sne, sneen tyder sin kulde, kulden tyder sin sol, solen tyder sin kulde, og så vender hun den, ikke? Kulden tyder sin sne, sneen tyder sit, altså hjertet tyder sin vinter. Vi kommer tilbage til start, ikke? I thought, okay, I have to try to do that in music, so that we respect this kind of mirroring thing. I don't know if you have discovered it, but it made me find a way to work on this. But she was much more, this is one of her very early poems. I think it's from before 1961. It's really early. I did not compose that one first. The first one I composed was the last song in the cycle, this Når jeg har hørt de tomme rum i huse, which Mette could tell much more about. It's a sonnet. It's one of these classical forms where you have these 14 lines and they can rhyme in a certain way. And what I do with every work where it has to do with vocal music, I will walk around reading the poem for myself. Når jeg har hørt de tomme rum i huse, fortælle drømme, som jeg selv har drømt, og hørt de glemte døre stå og sluse. Mine sunkne minder rundt på skrømt. Both to listen to what is there and to get to know it, because for me it's also to get to know it. It's so that I know the poem and my body knows it and my memory knows it. And then so it starts having a life as a poem, because that's for me the way into vocal music. So it has to be text that can take that process, and it has to have space, because you cannot. There are many good poems that are just fine. They're poems. You cannot set them to music. There's no space for music in it. But here is one. But this one, because this was the first kind of music that I, apart from that first line for Frostkrystal, then. I started from the end, you can say, with this Når jeg har hørt. And one of the når jeg har hørt de tomme rum i huse. And we had some meetings on that, both on the phone and in physical life, as to where is it in what key and where does it fit Inger's voice.
Yeah. And for me, it was actually important that the words were clear and you could understand everything. So I wanted to lower it quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. And that gave me some challenges, because you cannot just transpose, then the keyboard part, the piano part.
I marked all the places, and then Hanne got really stressed.
Because we were about deadline. Deadline was very close. Maybe it was transgressed. And I was very sure that it would be this accompanying thing with this flow thing with the polyrhythmic. That to me was my drum heritage, somehow this polyrhythmic things coming up in a floating way. And you two said it very flowing, which was great. It was even flowing more than I had imagined. I don't know if it was something you discussed among yourselves, or you just...
We just did it.
Yeah, but it was very good. And you asked the other day, is there sometimes somewhere where you, as a composer, you hear something you didn't expect?
Yeah. Yeah, I did ask you that. Yeah. Because you have your own world, kind of, and then you give it away, and then we create a new space for it. And it can be not totally different, but quite different. So was it a surprise for you, some places that, wow, I didn't think that, is that me? You said, did I really compose that?
Only positively.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no, I have absolutely no objections. There were only places here where I could say, oh, this you could stress a little bit more, or here you could take a breath, or here you can actually. This one where Inger is clapping, where ba 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 ba, go in a potato. You know that phrase. I think it's in all languages. Children, ba 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 ba. We had to have some humor at a point, at something more up tempo. And that text was like that. No, but with this tempo, I was just great. But then there was also this thing about the recitatives. And how has that been for you? Because that's a prosa text. And it's a key text for Inger Christensen. She talks about the landscape. She says, der landskabet. And landscape, it's what for her is what is there. It's old, it's new, it's there after we've been there. It's the ever.
It's
lasting.
quite great because it's still it's quiet. It's a little break. It's like this when you have this little appetizer in between dishes. This little, what's it called? In France, so it's hvad hedder det? Yeah, exactly. So you just clear everything, and then it's just the words that are very naked and very intense, and it demands really a sense of freedom to create it and to tell the story. And also to be free rhythmically and to take your breaks, to take your time when you need it. Yeah, that's important. So the timing of it.
Yeah. And when we met in Copenhagen some weeks ago, I was very happy to hear that my intentions about giving freedom to both pianist and singer were taken so positively by you. So you started filling it out the way I really had imagined, or I had hoped somebody would do with it.
Yeah, and it takes some time to find your own way of creating it.
But you said something to me the other day about freedom with new music. Maybe it was only yesterday that you said that.
No.
But you have been, it's not, you've first performed many pieces, or you've done
many pieces,
but you have
I've done some. Yeah.
And at least this about doing music that has not been, I mean, that's new music. What does that, what does that, is it something you like?
I love it actually, and because it's new, and it's new to me, and it's new to the audience, so you never know what's on the next corner. You don't expect anything. You don't expect it to sound in a certain way. So it's a completely open space and an open mind, and I think that's great. That's really great because we have so much that we all know. Oh, it's supposed to be in that way, and it's supposed to sound like this. But this is just completely freedom for me to create it.
That's a little hope I have for you, that when you enter your professional careers, and some of you are already there, that you also will ask composers to write for you. Because of course we, the contemporary composers, are totally dependent on you. If nobody wants to play our works, what are we? We're writing for the drawer. But it's also because it's an unhappy situation that has happened, at least in the Western culture. That's at a point, it was like the contemporary music and the traditional music, or the classical line, separated, as if they were two worlds. So you have these programs where either it's all new music or it's no music after year 1900, which is a pity, because the new music and the older music, they inspire each other, and for audiences, they discover new things.
Yeah.
So I really wish that you will take up the challenge and perform something which you have, like you're doing now. Some of you are doing the new songs, and that you do it, because it gives you a freedom to because there's not 1,000 recordings of how this particular Brahms lead is going to be sung. Because there are always so many who have been great stars. I mean, but you are a star also. And I mean, we have to fill it out. The tradition has to be revived, and the new music has to have its performances, so that it also get a history.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just the first singer for these songs, and you're the next. Right? And that's how it goes.
Yeah. Because that was also how it was with the classical masters.
Yeah.
They played only contemporary music. They didn't care about the past so much.
No, exactly.
Then, I mean, 50 years after Bach had died, somebody found some music, but they didn't perform it. And you know, that's the story. So I think I have spent most of the time. But do you have anything to add to the people or to me or whatever?
No.
Or do you have any comments or
some
questions that you would like to put? Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit how you work with the poems and the poetry. How do you, as a composer, decide in some of the songs that I've seen the scores for, there's repetition of certain lines from the poem.
Yeah.
How do you go about deciding what parts you want to repeat when you're putting it into music?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a very good question, because you have to take a freedom as a composer to form some music. And sometimes, if like me, who chooses these very transparent poems, the Mari Tusvik, the Norwegian one, is also writing very precise and nothing redundant. But sometimes it's just too short. Sometimes there's a point, and there's space for repetition, because you also have to be aware of the form. Because if you just go on with new lines, will people ever be able to relate to it? So I think it comes out of the work, actually. I don't take an intellectual decision, actually, never. I use my intuition very much, and my sense of form. But then sometimes what is good to do is, if you're not too much in a hurry and the deadline is all very tomorrow, then you have the time to put it away and come back to it after some weeks. And then you can better hear, oh, this is too compact. There has to be some piano here, or there has to be a repetition. So it's a very good idea to go away from it and listen and play and sing with fresh ears. So I hope it's an answer to your question. But of course, you have to respect the poet. If they have died, well, okay, they can't. But if you work with a contemporary poet, you maybe like to consult her and say, I would like to do it this way. But I think most poets, they like musicians to work on their texts. I have never had no from anybody. So once from a publisher, but that's because they think they can make money on new music. They can't. But yeah. And one more thing about vocal music, because you're all working on vocal music. The texts, the poems, they are half the thing. You really have to get to know them. But also not only for yourself. Audiences very often have the same difficulties as the rest about relating to poetry. But with music, it becomes much easier to relate to these complicated poems. So you also do the world a favor by taking an interest, because poetry is just as close to the core of things as music is just another way. And I will close my lecture by saying that to me it's about the essence. Let us work on conveying the essence.
Så krass.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Inger.